Mon frère Francois Villon. Francois, you lived in the 14th century, 15th century in France, and you were a poet. So, anyway, here we go. Mon frère Francois. Wake up, mon frère. You've been asleep a long time, and I need you. I've got a lot to deal with, you know. Like you felt when you were sentenced to be hanged in 1458 after the little heist at Collège de Navarre in Paris, where you tapped the bishop's chest for 500 crowns, you and most of your criminal colleagues who were studying for the ministry at the University of Paris and belonged to that charitable brotherhood of beggars and thieves, Les Gueux, a kind of medieval Freemasonry of crime. So anyway, Francois Villon for the reader, though Montcorbier was probably your shadowy real name. All this qualifies you to help me make the necessary moral judgments to sort out my life and my surroundings. First, let us take a look at my great sacrifices in the army of my country, where Nat Goller and I checked blood pressures of the heroic officer corps to keep them healthy, and we dutifully in our natty neckties and shiny shoes looked away as their genitals flopped up and down before us at eye level during exercise for taking stethoscope readings to tell their health and stress and punish these dear majors and proud colonels and adorable captains with 50 brisk genital hops on one foot instead of the 15 more sedate ones we were advised to ask. But alas, Francois, it was all such fun as they gasped away their pasty stature, and we checked our fingernails and touched our neckties respectfully for their humiliations so dear to us. What say you? Should we be punished or applauded for these pranks? Alas, who's to say? Probably not one had his heart collapsed because of our delicate brutality to these Christian militarists, naked as jaybirds as they're there before us. What say you, mon frère? What would you have done? Remember the time you turned out a rich fat bishop in his silken nightgown onto the Rue de Courbelet on a frozen midnight? Ah, it was such fun, and everyone laughed except the bishop. And then when each of us set fires and blamed some innocent scurvy other already known for such adventures, remember how we both deemed these frauds true and noble, because would these swine not have done the same to us? And anyway, it was such fun. Then our sadness shared as we and those we loved grew into age and wrinkles, and flabby flesh hanging free on bony arms to warn all others to make their peace with faltering change and be glad for the good early years, even though in both our times our fellow men and women only learned to love deeply just ahead of or after menopause, and that we all must live with such a sense of mystery over why each of our worlds was when and where it was, and not near some distant star none of us saw or understood, to live and drink and sing and love and pray and touch each other, and then at last to wonder what it all had meant in your time and mine. It is good, Francois Villon, for you and me to compare our worlds some 535 years apart, just now, as I jot these notes for you to read and to share our fullest selves. Francois, I've never been sentenced to be hanged. You got me there, but I'll tell you the times I've been in trouble, and you can see for yourself. I've been something of a rake, a scoundrel at times, but the occasions never made the news. Take the time I was run over by a small truck loaded with groceries. It was 1925, and since I was born in 1920, I must have been, well, let's see, I must have been 5 years old or so. See, it was a touch of justice, because several of us kids were stealing ice chips from the back of an ice truck. Today's young folk never saw this historic curiosity, and too bad they don't know what magic they missed. But back to the little grocery truck that knocked me down and ran right over me. I saved myself by pissing. That's what the doctor said. He said if he hadn't urinated before, it would have burst his bladder. But, wow, see, stealing is stealing, isn't it? It was right there on the tablets Moses salvaged No mention of little stealing or big stealing, just stealing, that's it. So the gallows for Francois for the 500 gold crowns, and the gallows for Robert for 3 chips of ice. But somehow I escaped. Maybe it was my age. Then another thing the Bible says, thou shalt not fib, or bear false witness, or something like that. Well, let me tell you about Betty Hawkins and how my parents acted on God's behalf. Well, at least my father did. My mother just sat there during the trial. I had this date about 1933 with Betty. Betty Hawkins. A Saturday matinee, 10 cents each. I had the money. I was loaded that day. I had 80 cents. And after the movie, guess what? We went to a second movie theater till after dark. God, we had fun. It was like being married. We ate popcorn together for 4 hours. It wasn't cheap, about 60 cents. 2 weeks allowance, and when I got home there was hell to pay. In the end, not telling them and getting the okay was sort of like lying. That's how my father reasoned it out. He was an engineer and a little weak on the law, so there I was, guilty. No movies for 3 months. I guess I told Betty Hawkins that is. But time passes and we all got over it, including my parents, except in my pubescent mind, something in the whole thing seemed absurd, like, big deal. That's an expression, Francois, we have here in the 20th century. Then, well, let's see. Yeah, I got court-martialed in the Army in 1947. 14 years after the movie crime for doing something the Army discourages, reading. I was reading a magazine on duty, and this Army doctor with a big military heart on all the time caught me and said, "Aha, I've got this smart-ass bastard reading a book on duty, aha." And Goller, too, you remember? I told you about the fun we had exercising the buck-ass naked officers. Maybe that's why we were court-martialed. I never thought of this before. So we go to trial with this red-faced cigar major trying to figure it out, and Goller and I reasoned, hell, we were reading magazines, not books. So if this hard-on couldn't tell the difference between a book and a magazine, then maybe he couldn't tell if we were actually doing the crime itself, reading. And this argument threw the cigar major, who was running the justice situation that day, into a total loop, and he couldn't figure it out. But he did adhere to our one-time honored principle, always screw the enlisted man. So he couldn't bust us, so he transferred me to a casual company where I played chess with Captain Saviscus, the CO, all day long, till I finally got out of my dumb army. I've often thought of Goller. I figured he made it big in Hollywood and has a 26-room house in Beverly Hills. And all his kids are on dope and he's got ulcers, and his wife, the second one, tried suicide and it didn't work. But otherwise, he was really successful in his life here in the untied states of America. So, see, Francois? We have a lot in common. We're both shady characters. But I guess you've been in a little more shade than me. So here we are with all these notes about our two selves across 535 years. It's not every day anyone does this, right? And we want to reach out to everyone, to be there for them a little bit, to help them see their fears and the mysteries of their lives that have all been before, and they indeed are not alone. And you and I, Francois, know each other well and wish to share our love, our tales, our escapades, our tastes of lovely thighs in every world, our drunken sleeps that let us wake at last the next day. All is so long, so terribly long before their appearance on the earth, and then at last, so let them read here, to read right here, that we wish them well, all of them, from the deepest corners of our hearts. Francois Villon, yours and mine. N'est-ce pas? August 27th, 1991.